singer, songwriter, and published author who infuses social justice into his art. A clear example of this is Crossroads, his record store day vinyl that just came out. Gary Marks, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing fine. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I wanted to have you on Record Store Day. We could talk about it as it came out, but I got a little sick, so we had to reschedule. Thanks for doing that and still coming on because I wanna hear about this album and everything that went into it.
Okay.
So the first thing I would say, I mean, it's definitely part of Crossroads because that spans your whole career basically. But just for your music in general, if there's someone listening who hasn't heard of you, how would you kind of describe the music that you make?
Well, I would say it's unique. I try not to follow formula or try and hit the moving duck commercially. I just kind of write improvisationally, find a little sound that works and see where it goes from there. And then lyrically, it's really the same. I mean, I don't really start with a theme or a subject in mind. I just kind of start writing the first sentence. And if it sounds like a really great first sentence, I just write a second sentence. And if it doesn't, I throw it out. So it's very
Seems simple
improvisational.
enough.
Yeah, and it always surprises me. I mean, I'm not really, an outline person. Even with
Mhm.
my novels, I just start with a sentence and then watch the characters do these things I'm not expecting them to do, and then the ending shows up at some point. So, yeah,
Yeah,
everything is kind of improvised.
awesome. Well, yeah, I did actually want to get to your like novels and literary writing later on also, but for now Crossroads specifically, I kind of mentioned it a second ago, but it spans like I mean decades really, like 1970s to 2021-ish. Take me into how you kind of selected these songs, put the album together, everything like that.
Right. Well, Lantern Records in Italy uh, reissued my very first record, Gathering, which was in 1973. It had John Scofield on it and David Samuels and Michael Cochran, all these really great jazz players that nobody knew yet,
Hmm.
that were just kids. So found them and formed the band for the recording studio purposes. But then when I went to Italy with my wife, we met Jacques and Barbara for dinner and we started talking about the politics of the day, which is pretty normal these days. Uh,
Yeah.
and uh, and I said, I have a lot of socio-political songs. That's basically, what I kind of tune into a lot of the time. Would you like to consider making a record of socio-political lyric music? And they said, yeah. And so I sent them all the ones that have to do with the mind and, finding your deepest spirit and the highest levels of love and pure, raw politics. I was writing songs about Nixon back
Hmm.
in those days that now we've got a 2.0 of that with the Supreme Court kicking in and making it into a V8 kingdom instead of a presidency. So, all those songs are very resonant with today. And that's how we formed Crossroads. And of course, we're at a crossroads. So that's where the title came from.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And so were these, I mean, like what was it like kind of going back to all these songs years or even decades later and kind of like you said it was focused on the socio-political lyrics, but also kind of this time capsule of your life and your music career.
Right. Well, my first three albums were re-released several times, like seven different times in Japan and Europe. So I
Hmm.
kind of knew that music pretty well. I had to keep
Okay.
dealing with it, right? But then
Yeah.
there were all these songs and actually eight albums worth of songs that I when I stopped touring and refused to tour anymore, the industry didn't like that very much. So they were like, okay, bye. And so they basically just wound up on my website, which nobody went to. And I didn't really care. I just wanted to make really good music. And uh, Paul McCandless of Oregon and all that, they didn't care either. They just played on the record and sounded great. And they were very happy about that. And so I was really making music for music's sake,
Hmm.
even in the 80s and then 90s. And so I look back at that music and feel like, it really holds up lyrically and also musically because the players I was choosing to play with were amazing. I mean, I didn't really want to just kind of form a band. I just with each album I chose like these great players, and if somebody was available, I would go to New York and record their part in New York and just
Yeah,
play with
session
great
musicians.
musicians. Yeah, well, I mean, but they were mostly great jazz players. They really
Mhm.
weren't session musicians,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
and so, I'd wait for Paul McCandless to get off tour with Oregon and say, okay, you ready? We got a couple of songs we can do. And he's like, yeah, come on. And I'd, hang out in New York and we'd do that. John played on a couple of records, John Scofield, and Art Landy and his entire band played on one of my records. And very few people know who Art Landy is. He's on ECM Records.
Mhm.
He's an astounding piano player, and people should go and check him out. He's uh, also didn't really like touring and just kind of did his music and recorded on ECM and then went home,
Yeah.
So uh, those are kind of the people I wound up playing with.
Hmm.
So it was fun. And, the recording studio is like my little home rather than being on the road and feeling like this is really great. I didn't ever really feel like it was great. I didn't like singing my songs over and over again.
Yeah.
So, I'd go into the studio and make these songs as good as they could get. And then when I listened back to them when I was doing Crossroads and choosing songs, I was like, yeah, these sound good. You did good work. So,
Yeah, well, it is a difference of like, especially making new songs in a studio. You're trying new things, you're playing new things all the time, and on the road, especially if you have some kind of big hit, you're essentially every show, however many hundreds you're doing, playing that song every night and doing it.
and there are great musicians and great songwriters who really like doing that. I mean,
Yeah,
Springsteen and Sting and all that, they get off on it. They love the applause. They love the energy and the power of, Coldplay and bringing 50,000 people together. It's an art form and amazing. And I don't think I could do it even if I wanted to, really. But I just have never really thrived on applause and, the spotlight and being a little scared of making a mistake live, not
yeah,
really remembering my lyrics real well because I've written so many songs. It's like, okay, what's the next sentence? I mean, so when I'm in
yeah.
the studio, it
That's
doesn't
fair.
matter.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and I
And,
think so. It's also maybe it is this kind of um shying away from the spotlight or not wanting to mess up live. But what kind of went into that decision? Because I was reading about like at the point that you just made the decision that to stop touring and you weren't going to do live shows anymore. And I do some like music production, and so I'm either making original stuff or with others, but I don't have like an expectation to tour or play shows or gig or anything. It's really about the recorded music, and that can kind of also I've talked with some other bands and artists on here. I can do things there or take my time to hone sounds that I can't get live and really like craft
right.
this soundscape. So what just like yeah, take me into your decision when you were like, you know what, touring's not for me and I'm not going to do it anymore.
You're very close in terms of what you said,
Hmm.
because my songs are more important than me. I write them, they're like really my creative spirit and what I have to say to the world. And if I can, find all the right sounds and the right arranging and the right mix and like put all the levels exactly right for all the instruments. And then the song comes alive and there it is and it's perfect. And then I go out on tour and you've got to deal with the sound guys or gals and then somebody isn't feeling well that night and they're not playing that well and the drummer doesn't start in the right tempo. I just didn't I felt like I wasn't doing a service to the songs, and I'd rather
Hmm.
be home. The other thing is, and I'm sure you know this being in the business, when you're on the road or working with a major label, it's different than just living a normal life and experiencing life as a normal
Yeah.
human. So you tend to write about those experiences and being on the road and Jackson Brown you know and that's great and a lot of great songs have been written about that and about meeting a girl for a couple of days and all that it's great but what about just being a normal person and writing about the difficulties of living a normal life with maybe finding somebody you love that loves you back but doesn't idolize you and isn't going to put
Hmm.
up with anything. And then
Yeah.
you've got to, deal with a real person who considers themselves as valuable as they consider you. And, walk into a store and nobody's asking for an autograph. So when they overcharge you, you got to deal with it. And I found a lot more writing material in that world than I think I could have ever found on the road. So it was a
Yeah.
conscious decision to just, what would a normal human have to say as a poet, as a writer?
Yeah. Well, because even even the big stars are normal humans. They're all these hit songs are about just the human experience. Whether
Right.
that's life, love, whatever. Like it's always in and around something that listeners can relate to. Are you a music artist looking to get your songs on Spotify, Apple Music, and basically every other streaming platform? Then you should check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a music distribution service. It's what I use to get all my music out across platforms, and I find it really helpful. You can manage your songs, lyrics, credits, and even manage releases across artists under one account. I don't think I would have gotten started as early as I did with music if it weren't for DistroKid. So if you want to get started, I'll put their pricing on the screen here. And yes, that does say the cheapest plan is at $2 a month. I know some of you spend more than that every day on your coffees. Like this is to get your music heard by the world. When we're getting off track, DistroKid has so many additional features like pre-save pages, getting your music onto platforms like Instagram and TikTok where people can put your music on their posts. If you use my link in the description, you will get 7% off any of these plans, making it even cheaper to get your career started, and so much more. So again, check out my link in the description for 7% off any plan. And now let's get back to the episode. When you're going to write and kind of I don't know how much it's like a studio thing for you or a okay now I'm gonna sit down to write thing, but just what's your kind of process like for writing songs? Is it a very intentional thing? Or are you kind of just doing it all the time? Take me into like your writing process.
Well, I know more about piano than I do about guitar
Mm,
because I studied piano with Art Landy and Michael Cochran, who was my piano player on Gathering. So I learned jazz theory and improvisation theory, and I can, hack around jazz songs and all that. But what it really basically did was give me a lot of harmonic ideas, a lot of rhythmic ideas with asymmetric meter that I studied and kind of put into my body, right? So then
mhm.
I would sit down at the piano and just start improvising and pretend I was like Keith Jarrett and just improvise as best I
Yeah.
can, not sound anything like him. But some things would come up. Maybe I'd make a mistake and go, oh, wow, what was that? Or come up with some really cool rhythm and go, oh, wow, this feels really good. This is interesting. And then I would kind of build from there. And I don't really sit down at the piano to improvise every day thinking, I hope a song comes out of it, because it kind of uh, ruins it's almost like observing the quark, right? You put the tape recorder on saying, I'm going to write a song, and then everything that you would have done without the tape recorder on never happens.
Yeah.
So I basically sit down and say, I'm just going to improvise and have fun and try and create something cool. And then if something comes up, then I grab it and say, hey, all right, this is interesting. And then I kind of expand it from there. It's the same thing on guitar, but I don't know guitar as well as I know piano. It's more like a rhythm instrument. So I will literally take my guitar, maybe put it in an open tuning or not, and just grab notes. And if it sounds good, that's a chord, and I can name it, Arnold. I mean, I really am not concerned about whether or not it's a B flat minor 7 sharp 11 chord. I just name it Arnold so I can remember it, maybe write down the fingerings and then move it from there and just see if some movement happens from it that makes me start wanting to sing over it. It's very
Yeah.
improvisational. It's very kind of,
Yeah.
what's the word?
Free flowing, just kind of,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
just let it happen.
Yeah.
And the minute I sit down trying to write a song, well, that's the last day that's going to happen.
Well, I think that's the perfect mindset to have because it's also it tempers expectations and it if if you go in saying, oh, now I'm gonna sit down and try to write something or write a song, and then you don't or you don't write your best thing, you're is like this disappointment. It's like, oh man, I came here for this and that didn't happen. But if you go just to enjoy it just as almost like a hobby thing that you're gonna sit down and
Right.
have fun with and then you do get something that's a lot more rewarding. And if not, that's fine. You were just going to hang out and do it as a fun thing for a bit. So um
Yeah, and I kind of look at it and say, wow, you're so lucky to be able to make any sense at all out of music.
yeah.
Let's just have fun today and see if something fun happens. Whether it's improvisation and you let it go out the window, that's good. If it turns into a song, that's great.
Yeah.
There have been
And
times when I haven't written a song that I'd want to keep for like 6 months, maybe
wow.
longer. And then one day I write a song, and then I write 10 songs in 10 days. And I don't really know how that all happens. I just I just catch on to something, and then, you know, as Huey Lewis once said, when the muse hits, you can't be out there washing your car.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
exactly. Or
Huey.
I also I was just listening to a podcast with the pop star Charlie Puth who was talking about writing and he was like writing songs is like being able to print out free lottery tickets every day. Like you can go, it costs like almost nothing and you scratch this itch and then you might have like this awesome super cool song that you can like put out there and do things with. Um
That's a
and
good way to describe it because, 99 out of the 100 lottery tickets that you scratch off aren't going to pay off.
yeah, they're not going to be that good. And you're just like,
Just
okay,
keep
whatever. And you toss
scratching,
them aside.
keep scratching. You'll get a
Yeah.
lottery ticket eventually.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So but like for Crossroads specifically, and it's fine to, not have like a clear answer because they're so spread out over time. But do you remember any one of those songs like coming super fast and you like this improvisational style you were mentioning, just like really things fell into place and came together really quickly?
Yeah, most of them come pretty quickly. And
Mm,
my novels, I write an entire short novel in like 10 days. And then
mm.
it takes me months to rewrite it really carefully. But the basic novel is written in
Yeah.
10 days. Um, so the songs that I really remember are the songs that took a really long time. And there was
That
one
was gonna be
song,
my next question.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was one song on Crossroads, not on Crossroads, called Soulful Days that was covered by Chris Williamson on one of her albums. And it's very long formed. I brought it together through like 5 or 6 different fragments. And then after months of deciding, okay, this is the song, and coming up with a tag that also wasn't anything to do with the song. Now I've really got the song. And then I wrote lyrics and I would play it for a friend and they go, no, that's not your best lyric. And I throw out the lyrics. So that song took me not working on it every day, but before it was done, it was 9 months. It was almost like having a baby,
Uh,
but most of those days I wasn't pregnant.
yeah. Yeah. And then I also was curious, since you take so much pride in your writing and everything, and then want to craft these meaningful songs. I was reading about how you also eventually made the decision to stop signing publishing deals and just own all your own rights, which I'm a huge fan of and I respect. But what have your experiences been like, both signing those publishing deals and what benefits came from that, but then also what have you felt more comfortable with now that you like have full ownership over your art?
Right. Well, back in the day, when you signed a publishing deal with a big publisher like Arista, you get an advance, pretty
Mhm.
decent sized advance. So that was exciting, you know. And then I went to LA to talk to these guys. They put me up at the Sunset Marquis. It was like really exciting. It's a cool pink hotel with all these rock stars walking around. I was like, yeah, you know. And then they started talking about, well, you know, now that you're a professional songwriter, how about trying to write a song? Literally, they said, like Huey's "I Want a New Drug," and I was like, call Huey. I mean, what do you want me to? I want a new cat. I mean, what exactly do you want me to imitate? Because I don't, you know, look, I was a professional songwriter before you gave me an advance. That's why you gave me an advance. So it's not like I'm not a professional songwriter already, but I will tell you that I'm not sure I could do what you're asking me to do, but I guarantee you I'm not going to try to do it. So I think we're done, basically. You know, they were
Yeah.
basically hiring a machine. And I'm
Yeah.
like, sell Gary music.
They were trying to do what AI does now, like make a song in this style.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that's not unique to the people who have signed major publishing deals who are not already, you know, famous with big records. They're not buying the catalog, in other words. They're buying you as a
Hmm.
writer.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be bought as a writer. I wanted them to place my songs with singers, you know.
Yeah.
So that was the downside of it. I mean, the upside of it was a really decent amount of money. And and the other upside was learning that you know, working in the music business is a business. I asked for it. I hired an attorney to try and get me a publishing deal. That was on me.
Yeah.
And I had to learn, like, what exactly do you want? You know, because if you don't want to tour and you don't want a publishing deal, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then there was another time where my music attorney offered me a record deal with a record company called Discovery that was a subsidiary of Warner Brothers at the
Yeah.
time. And I had just met my wife to be like a month before that. I didn't know she was going to be my wife, but I really
Hmm.
liked her. And I looked at this contract and it said, hey, cool, you know, if it does really well, you'll be on the road for 9 months. Otherwise, you won't, you know. And I'm like, I'm not going on the road for 9 months. And I don't want my record to not do well. So I'm not gonna, I just turned to Teresa. I said, if I sign this, our relationship is over. You're too smart to be Peter Pan's shadow. You're not going to be following me around the world or around California and you know, Sacramento and,
Yeah.
you know. it's not going to work. So I threw it in the garbage.
Hmm.
And I don't have any regrets about that because, again, it allowed me to live life as a normal human and write from that perspective instead of being dragged around by the nose and being told what to write and who to have as your producer, which happened to a friend of mine. I won't mention her
Yeah.
name, but completely ruined her unbelievable songs by the record company insisting on a producer that didn't fit her music. And her record was a disaster. So, uh, I don't have any regrets about the road I followed, the path
Yeah.
not taken.
Hey heroes, sorry to interrupt that podcast episode, which I hope you are enjoying, but I wanted to tell you about my clothing line, Quest Clothing. Ever since I started really pursuing YouTube and music and all these creative things that I do, I've dreamed about starting this clothing line specifically. I had the name, I had the idea like for years before I started it, and now it's finally here. You can wear clothes like this. I have sweatshirts available, t-shirts, even clothing for like my music with cover arts and lyrics and things like that. It's all super, super cool. And right now is the best way for you guys to support me across everything I do. So be sure to check out the Quest Clothing web store with the link in the description and follow at Shop Quest Clothing on Instagram for updates about collections, discounts, things like that. Anyways, I don't want this self-sponsorship to take too long, so let's get back to the episode.
I feel like record companies, I mean, as probably many people know, there are, I mean, just kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. They don't really know what they're doing, but like some new artists, have they have the people that they like to work with, a certain writer, a certain producer, whatever. But so many times I hear from interviews or stories that these artists like sign their first major deal and the label's like, all right, we're gonna bring you out here and then just get you in rooms with as many different writers and producers as
Oh,
possible.
yeah.
And it's like, well, no, like you want to kind of sit down with someone and work on a bunch of songs and find a rhythm, find a chemistry to then be able to work together and know how each other works versus just like every different song has different writers on it and a different sound and things like that.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I've never been able to co-write. I would
Mm.
never want to. I'm just like, I want to write Gary songs. That's my ego trip and my creative sourcing. I wouldn't want to co-write a novel either. I mean, how would you do that?
Yeah,
So
that
I,
seems like like a big task to me because you're balancing such a huge story that even from what you're mentioning is usually your writing process. You already have the story kind of mapped out. So like, how do you
well,
bring
and
someone into
don't
that?
don't have it mapped out. I'm just kind of
Uh,
following the wind, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the idea. But the whole idea of writing with someone else or performing with someone else and all that, again, there are some people that thrive on that. I would never put that down. Every possible way of writing can work if
Mhm.
you want to go down that road and work it out, But
Yeah,
the situation of being, I mean, the person I was talking about with the producer, she was such a great musician. She could have and should have produced her own album. It would have come out sounding the way it sounded when I was listening live, and she would have been amazing. It was great, great music. And they assigned her a producer and they said, go get a massage and we'll handle the basics. Don't worry. And they took her own band and changed the tempo of her song. And by the time she came back, it's like, well, we can't change it now. I mean, we just spent 4 hours. Wow.
that's crazy. Yeah, I think it's
Have-
also a big thing. I'm very whenever I work with someone on a song, I most of the time it's just like free flowing collaboration and we can do whatever. But a couple times it's more like I'm brought in as a producer to like help a song they already have an idea for. And if that's the case, I'm very cautious to like not make crazy changes without them like knowing or saying that it's fine. I was checking like, hey, could I do this? Do you or like I have this idea. Would you want to do it? Because it's some artists and producers have that relationship where there's just enough trust or enough history where you can go in and edit something and make these changes and it's kind of the two of you working together is the sound. But if you're brought in to kind of bring a song to life or match the artist's vision, you have to kind of keep true to that and not let your ego get in the way and apply your own sound to it.
Yeah, and I'll say just from your perspective too, that pretty much every great engineer I've worked with, and fortunately for me, I've worked with a lot of really great engineers and great mixing engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Their input is incredibly valuable and
Yeah.
most often correct. And they might suggest an arranging, idea that it's like, wow, I didn't think of that. Yeah, okay. Or how about adding this here? Or how about, if we take that instrument out here and give it a little bit more emptiness, and it's like, yeah, that sounds great. And that happens, you know,
Yeah.
100 times a song, right? So that kind of organic process is great. I mean, it's like having a band member saying, I don't like my guitar part. Or we came up with this guitar part, but I came up with something else. What about that? And it's like, yeah, that sounds great. That's all collaborative and wonderful. It's
Yeah.
when people are not are being kind of forced together, you know, like
Yeah.
it's not just, let's glue this together. It's like super glue, too late.
Yeah. Like you're already, you already messed up the first step or like a Lego set, you messed something up like all these pages ago. You're gonna have to undo everything you've done, go back to fix that, and then you can start building again.
Right,
Um, yeah,
right.
yeah. You mentioned a bit ago writing Gary songs or like having a certain song style and it'd be tough to co-write, but you also talked about back in the days of you signing publishing deals, wanted to pitch out your songs and find artists to sing them. How do you know what songs are Gary Mark songs and can go on a project like Crossroads or Gatherings versus something that's pitched to other artists?
Well, I've never written a song to pitch to other artists. I just write
Got it.
Gary songs and then, like, I'll tell you an interesting story. This really great
Please.
Teresa Trull, who's has a lot of records on Olivia Records, and she's worked with Chris Williamson. A very great singer, and she was introduced to me by this great musician named Barbara Higbee. And we met for dinner, and Barbara said, listen, Gary's a really great songwriter. He's written a lot of great songs. You're looking for songs for your next record. You guys should get together. So Teresa came over to my house, and I played her a bunch of songs for 3 or 4 hours, and she wrote down 5 or 6 of them. And as she was leaving, I said, listen, there's this one song I wrote like a week ago, and it's really not, it's not a song you're going to sing. It doesn't really have a hook, but it just means a lot to me right now because I just wrote it. You feel like listening to it before you leave? And she said, sure. And I played her a song called Only Time Can Tell. And she begged me to sing to let her sing that song. And I'm like, that one? And it got radio play, and it was like the biggest song on her album. And it's like, you never really know. I really wouldn't know what song to pitch because
Yeah.
you're usually gonna pick something you think is gonna work for today, but by the time it's recorded, today is yesterday, and today is tomorrow, and you didn't write a song for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I just don't try and shoot the moving duck. You just
Yeah.
write the songs you want to write, and sometimes the style comes around, or like what seems to be happening now is that my style never did come around, but now it's being looked at as a great, unique legacy artist who was undiscovered
Yeah.
rather
Well, I think
than
it's
a,
also coming around meaning wise for, something like Crossroads, where you've written these songs decades ago, back during the Nixon administration, and oh look, some similar situation came up where now it's so relevant and is, matches the situation just so perfectly. So let's
yeah,
put it out on this project.
yeah. And then on this project also are songs that are more timeless, like, what really is love? How do you work with that?
Yeah.
Not I love you or I don't love you, but like what is it? And do you really have you ever really felt it? Would you know what to really do with it when you feel it? Other than just hanging out and lust, which is great. I would, I wouldn't even want to be a human without that. But there's beyond that, there's other things that you entrust that word to, right?
Hmm.
And then other songs of like, you know, what what is what's the path to your deepest self, your deepest form of integrity, you know? What is that? How do you find it? Because the song, The Elemental Line, talks about me not being able to find it, but I know where it is. And you have to just keep searching for it and connecting to it as often as possible, right? So there are
Hmm.
all these different things. The love song I was talking about is called The Love We Take. It's on Crossroads. And it's basically, if you don't give love all the time, it's really not love. You can't withhold it until somebody, deserves it that day or that hour. You either give love or you're not in love and you're not loving. So
Yeah.
there are all these thoughts that I've had that when they come out in songs, they're kind of unique perspective, and those are the songs that made it onto Crossroads.
Yeah. Well, it's like that the Beatles lyric. In the end, the love you take is equal to the love that you make.
And
Um,
that's one of the great lyrical lines in music.
yeah,
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 yeah, it's
exactly.
beautiful. Right, exactly.
So what is this is my attempt at a segue, but is love that feeling that you get with playing music with your son, or having him play drums on your album Alien Nights?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, it's love and it's pride. And, when you have a son or a daughter, that connection is there pretty strongly. But if you want to keep that analogy going, then there are definitely going to be things that you as a son or your son, if you have a son or daughter someday, um, your parents aren't going to really connect to in love very much. You ruin their brand new carpet by painting Monet painting on it with indelible paint, whatever.
Yeah,
You won't eat because you don't feel like eating, and then, you finally get hungry and drink a bottle of maple syrup. And there are all those things. So what I'm saying is that it's easy to love when you feel it, but how do you love through the feelings of
unconditionally.
unconditionally? And unconditional is a funny word because it's not like you don't want to teach your child not to do those things or that you
Yeah,
feel disappointed. But you can still love them if you're feeling disappointed or angry. You can still love them.
yeah,
And so then you get into what love really is, It's the same thing with a wife or a husband. You can be disappointed or angry, but if you stop loving them, that's on you. That's not them.
yeah, yeah. And so now I know we kept, and that was such a deep touching conversation, or a topic. So I'm like trying to move on, but I also don't want it to seem like I'm just blowing past that. Uh,
Okay, it's
but I
fine.
also want to get into your literary works, your writing. writing. I don't know. I'm in such a mindset where like if someone says writing to me, I think of songwriting or music writing. So I need to like separate the two mentally. Um, but you're also an author. The first book of yours I read about or heard about was the Dance on the Diamond Sky, which seems to tie in pretty well with music. But there were like so many other books listed there, and I kept scrolling. There's so many genres and so many different
Yeah.
titles. How did you? What was your first book that like started you? How do you start writing, and then what makes you want to try all these different styles from there?
Well, The Dance in the Diamond Sky was my first book.
Okay.
I was writing a novel. I didn't think I was because the process that I'm telling you about was the process I used. I just
Yeah.
started. I thought maybe it would be like a little poem, or maybe then it turned into a short story, and then it turned into a long short story, and then a novel. But the Dance in the Diamond Sky, that those words come from Mr. Tambourine Man, Dylan's song, Tambourine Man.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of semi-autobiographical about me growing up in the late 60s with a group of friends who were trying to just live a normal life, but were being drafted by a president into the Vietnam War. And the war was not popular with a lot of people. It wasn't a minority of people that thought, why are we there? It's very similar to now with Iraq, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and then what are we going to do about it? And, you know, are we going to protest? And if we're going to protest, what does that protest look like? Because there was Martin Luther King and the nonviolent thing, and that is, of course, noble and heroic and wonderful, but you know, sometimes it doesn't work against people that are maintaining power with no conscience.
Yeah.
You know, there's a line in Orson Scott Card's, he wrote a book called The Ender's Game, right? Great book. And one of the, I think it was the second book, he's talking to Ender and saying, you know, nonviolence, pacifism only works when you find an enemy that can't bear to kill the innocent. How many times are you going to find an enemy like that? Wow. So
Yeah.
one of the characters in the book decides to take matters into his own hands and decides to set fire to draft boards in the middle of the night and starts being chased by the FBI. And then Jackie, me-ish, the musician, hippie, nonviolent kid, who loves this guy because he's been such a great friend to him and his girlfriend and all that. And then this guy, Lee, shows up at Jackie's door needing help one day, and Jackie's got to make a decision to either help
Yeah.
save his friend or not.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool book. It's a coming of age book. It's got a lot of resonance to America 2026 in it. And then the other books, yeah, I mean, it's basically what I'm saying is once I kind of went through that subject and felt like I'd pretty much said everything I wanted to say, I wrote a sentence one day and said, hey, that might be a really cool sentence to start a novel. And then it just kind of took off. Autobiography of an AI is one of them. I,
Yeah.
you know, uh, he's an amazing guy, this AI. And he looks back from, 2070 or 2170 or whatever it was, and looks back at his life and tells his story. It's a
Yeah.
cool book. And there are others, yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Dance in the Diamond Sky absolutely relevant today with everything going on, especially Iran and all that. But yeah, that's awesome. That also reminds me, I can send it to you after this if you want. But my favorite band, Pilots, has a song, Bounce Man. That's a very similar story. Like lyrically, it's very um, seeing like your friend as this wanted guy on the nightly news, and then you're trying to help him kind of flee and escape and do that. And so I'll send that along to you because that's like almost like beat by beat the same the
Yeah.
same story. So
Yeah, send it to me. That'd be
yeah,
great.
and it's really funny because it's this like dramatic, almost like chase song. Like you have this feeling of like the probably the cops or whatever are like right behind him, but it's in this very upbeat like funky sound. And so it's a very funny like dichotomy song.
Right.
um
If you love live music and going to concerts, you need to get yourself some loop earplugs. I made a video on my second YouTube channel about loop earplugs. I did a review for them by bringing them to a concert, and they were the best earplugs I've ever used. They do a great job at blocking out crowd noise, but still allowing you to hear the music. They come in this tiny, very portable case. You can see it's like a fraction of the size of my hand. Plus, they just look awesome. I got the ones that they did in collaboration with the Tomorrowland Music Festival, and they look awesome. They say "Live, Love, Unite" on them. You can see they're in a cool circular design, so even when you have them in, you don't just have this big block plugging up your ears. There's a nice ring, makes it look a bit more stylish than normal earplugs. I have the Loop Experience 2s in collaboration with Tomorrowland, and even with the earplugs themselves, they sent me 4 sizes of tips. Extra small, small, large, and medium is already loaded in there. So there's plenty of customization. It should fit your ears no matter what with one of those sizes. Use my referral code in the description to get 15% off your pair of Loop earplugs. Back to the episode.
you do so much, and a really cool thing of yours that I saw was also the multicolor poetry. Take me into that and how you started doing that, how you like kind of shape it from the original poem that you write, everything like that.
Well, okay, so that was originally called co-opetry, but then people didn't really understand what it was. So now it's just color poetry. What it was is, I wrote a poem and wrote a number of poems, lots of poems. And then one day I started just kind of seeing that if you went in a zigzag fashion down the poem, it could create another poem inside the poem. But how would you actually let people read that? So I just changed it into a color. So if you just follow the red zigzagging down the poem, it makes another poem. And then maybe there are 3 poems inside the poem. So one would be red, one would be green, one would be blue, and they all make their own little poems inside the poem. And I'm pretty sure that if your poem is long enough that anybody could do it with any poem. I mean, don't tell anybody that I'm didn't work that out way ahead of time.
Yeah.
But if anybody out there thinks that they could write a really good color poetry poem, they can send it into my website, and the board of color poetry, basically me, will decide whether or not to put it on their website on the website as a color poem. You're welcome
Yeah.
to submit.
I was gonna say, breaking news, poems are made up of words. So if you have words down, there might be a
Yeah,
poem in there somewhere.
yeah, it could be. It could be a really great. It could be better than the original poem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or, take on a whole different meaning than the original.
They all do. Yeah, yeah. The meaning is very, very different.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And so are you, when you pick out which words to color differently, are you intentional with like, I want this to have different meaning than the others? Okay.
I think it would be if you're only going to make a small color poem, it would be really difficult actually to have the same message in that poem. But I think it would also be boring.
Mhm.
So really, it's pretty easy to find different messages, or even an opposite message, which is kind of cool, you know?
Yeah,
One's all loving and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden there's one that's hate, you know, or something. It's like cool.
yeah.
So, so yeah, color poetry can do whatever you want. But I think the least interesting one would probably be one that repeats the same message.
Yeah, yeah. That's another thing I love for a lot of artists I like in like verses of songs. They'll have the same scheme, same general form, but like um flip like the words. So instead of whether it's like a flipped perspective or flipped mean like love to hate, anything like that. So I think it's a great strategy for any kind of creative writing.
Yeah, and
Um
it's just fun. It just keeps my creativity fluid and improvised, you know.
yeah,
Keeps
yeah.
the juices running.
Yeah. So, and then also I read that now you've kind of expanded just because I see it as your name here on Zoom also, but just into this like Marksland entertainment thing and turned it into this whole like family business with your wife and your daughter. Yeah, tell me more about like what that is or what exactly Marksland Entertainment does.
Well, I my original company for gathering was called Are We a Company? It was, but people would read, and the logo was a question mark. And people would read it and they'd think it was some Indian name. It's like Araweh. Is that from like some Indian, American Indian? No, no, you're not reading it right. So eventually I felt like I should change the name. And by that time I was married with kids and all my kids were playing music and writing great songs to the girls were. And Sean, my son, is an incredible drummer. I mean, he plays to like Animals as Leaders and Tool, and he's like
Wow.
a monster drummer.
Yeah.
And so, I changed it to Marksland Entertainment because now we were like a big land of Marxes.
Of Marks. Yeah.
And my wife is amazing because actually she heard my music before she met me. She was turned on to my music by a friend who then told her to come and meet me. And so she's always been very, very supportive of my music and very supportive of the kids' music. And so she's like my music manager, my
Mhm.
social media specialist. And of course, I can't compete to some of the people I'm working with, like Kip, who's amazing. But she's helped all the kids with their music, and my daughter Skylar does my website design. She's a photographer and website designer, and a great songwriter. And she wrote her first album when she was 8 years old
Wow.
of incredible songs, and went into the recording studio and played them all first take on the piano while she was singing. And so she gave me producer credits, and people said, "What did you do when you produced Skylar's album?" And I said, "I drove her to the studio and then I took her out for ice cream."
Yeah. You were more of like an A&R or executive assistant than a producer.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
that's
Yeah. I love that you're like, not only that your kids are so into music, but you're kind of giving them these opportunities to go in a recording studio at 8 years old and like make an album and do all that. That's so awesome and must have been so much fun to do with her.
it really was. It really was. And one of my daughters, we were recording with uh, a guy who was Mick Fleetwood's recording engineer, Lynn Peterson. And Sean walks in with his electronic drum set at 11 years old. And my daughter is 14. She's writing all the songs, playing guitar and bass. And Lynn is looking at me going like, "What are we doing here?" And I'm like, "We're gonna make some really good music." And Sean like sets up his drums and he's like getting tones, and Lynn's like, "Okay, I guess we're ready." And he says, "Okay, Sean," you pitch the talk button. He goes, "Sean, are you ready?" And my 11-year-old son goes, "Let's light this candle." Made a great record.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well,
there's
yeah, yeah. It seems like your passion for music or any musical genes you have definitely got passed down to your kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I don't think it was coincidence because my my living room has always been filled with, guitars,
Yeah, I mean, I see like two guitars behind you, a piano, on this stuff. So
piano, and
they've just been around it also.
that was their toys when they were growing up. They'd walk into the living room and decide what to play with. You want to play with the drums or a tambourine or a bass or guitars or a piano and synthesizer, just go play. You want
Yeah.
Legos? You can play with Legos too, but they weren't as interesting as my toys.
Yeah, they didn't make as cool sounds.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. I never criticized the sounds they made.
Mhm.
And the way I taught, I mean, I taught improvisation theory for 35 years. I taught in some universities as well. But the way that I taught my kids was they would sit down and they would try something and they'd say, "Hey, Dad, what's this?" And I'd say, "Oh, that's a C minor seven sharp, minor seven sharp five chord." "Oh, and how come it sounds good when it goes here?" "Well, that's because it's resolving there." And then they didn't have any more questions and I'd walk away. And that's how they learned, by just asking questions, getting an answer, and me walking away. It was
I mean,
very cool.
even that level of knowledge is great, or leaving it as someone who wants to learn, because I know there is I'm in school for music, so I've been required to kind of take on some theory knowledge and know what know what I'm doing. But I've met people who are like, kind of against learning theory because they want the creativity and the freedom and not feeling like they're breaking the rules or anything.
Well,
But
let's talk about that.
I want to talk about it because
Theory is theory
I'll
is
let
not
you go first.
theory, the right kind of theory is not there to tell you what to do. It's to tell
Yes.
others what you did so
Yes.
that you
It's the
communicate.
analysis. It's showing what's happening or what typically happens in through
Not
music's
well,
history.
so you can create something that isn't typical at all, and you can understand theoretically what you did and then communicate it to someone else. But at the minute it creates any kind of boundary that your ears are going past, then the theory is inhibiting you. The theory should be enough. It's like the English language. There should not be a word in the English language that can't be defined somehow, right? But the definition doesn't mean that you can't use it. It's just defining the word. So you have an endless
Yeah.
amount of notes and harmonies and rhythms to choose from. Literally, I'm not sure literally, but probably close to infinite, right?
Yeah.
And then when you choose what you want and what your ears like and where you want to go emotionally and in your body and all that, then you have the language to communicate that to yourself and others. But if you use it as a restriction, then you're misusing the theory.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's also like something so I don't know, intrinsic or like intangible about music that a lot of it is feeling or experience more than anything. And so um there was some story I was hearing about of creating this song, and like a lot of modern songs, they're using these heavy like sub bass like 808 synth sounds, um and hitting it, and one it's like a team of producers and writers and they're working on it, and one of them had like laid it down, got the beat ready. I think it was like a rap song or something, and then another was like, okay, now we should go in and like tune the 808s, make sure they like line up with the chord progression and everything. And the other guy just kind of like gave him a look and was like, what? Like, what are you like? Didn't under like no formal like theory knowledge. He was like, it sounds fine. Like we can just leave it like this. Um, and I think a lot of it is like try something new, make something weird, and that breakthrough. There's a um whole thing of atonal music, arrhythmic music that
Right.
can't be like classified as easily. And so,
Right.
just do, and those are the extremes, but like go just do whatever feels right or also or feels cool or just whatever you want to creatively express or create.
Absolutely. I once went to a concert by Cecil Taylor, this atonal, abstract pianist, right? And he would come out in concerts. He never spoke to the audience. He never even looked at the audience. This was his kind of MO, right?
Yeah.
He'd come out with a white towel around his neck, just sit down and immediately start to play like this complete torrential, stormy hurricane thing for like 40 minutes and then get up and walk off the stage before the applause could even start, right? And I was at Zellerbach in Berkeley, University of Berkeley Auditorium. And he walked off the stage. And I was sitting there. I really got into the kind of the dream space of it. It was like pretty extraordinary physically what he was able to do. And people are streaming out, and I'm just sitting there like with my hands over my face. And the lights go on, and all of a sudden, Cecil comes out. There's like 100 people left in the auditorium, and he played a Beethoven sonata for nobody and then walked off the stage. That was like so cool.
That's really cool. Like a bonus like intimate show after his first performance.
Right, right. And I'm like, okay, he can do that too. Gee, all right. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
So,
that's a whole other thing of just like versatility and being able to do so many different things versus um being pigeonholed into one style of thing or one sound or anything like that.
yeah, and he became famous somehow, maybe as playing jazz or whatever, and then went into where he wanted to go and just stubbornly stayed there because that's what he wanted to put out to the world and that's who he wanted to become as an
Yeah.
artist. Right? And that's amazing. He was
Yeah,
amazing.
so many of my favorite artists and producers are like that. They're, kind of doing in and around the same sound and to as their career grows and then now they do whatever they want and make all different kinds of music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have to just find, everybody's got to find themselves in their art, and just the self-expression is the whole thing, not self-imitation. How well you can imitate and how much money you can make, how much applause you can get. Those are games that if you want to play those games, absolutely, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing immoral about it, nothing immoral about wanting to make money as a musician either. If you want to be in the business and
Yeah.
submit to the rules of the road in the business, and you enjoy that life, then that's great. No judgment. I just I've always been too
It's
much of
not
a
for you.
I just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to start wrapping up here, but I've had a great time and just have a couple other questions here where if there's someone listening who now, I mean, this has been such an amazing conversation to now is like, wow, I love this Gary guy. I got to go check out some of his music. What's like one song or maybe it's Crossroads as a whole, but what's one thing you want them to go listen to as like a first introduction to Gary Mark's music?
Well, they could go to Spotify and listen to the three singles from Crossroads. They're pretty good. They're up as singles. One is called I Guess It Never Stops. One is called Cross Beams, and one is called The Elemental Line. And there's another single coming out in about a month. But that would be one way. Or you could go to GaryMarks.com or GaryMarksMusic.com, either, and listen to all my music for free. Check out all the lyrics. There's no money involved. I never ask anybody to pay for anything. Just kind of listen and see if they
Enjoy.
can join into the emotions and thoughts and philosophies I'm putting out. And if they do, that's great. So
Yeah.
all my songs and all my albums are on there. Crossroads as an album is also on there, and you can listen to all the songs and read the lyrics on the Crossroads page on my website.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then to really wrap things up and just start moving forward, because you give me the sense of someone who's always working on something, always writing. What's kind of the next project for you, or what's coming up for you?
Well, I'm always working on a new record and always working on
Okay.
a novel, usually, kind of go this direction or that direction. I'm not sure yet. But one of the things that I'd really like to have happen, I'd like to find a publisher for The Dance in the Diamond Sky. I think it's worthy as a book. And I'd like to find an indie record company that wants to put out more of the songs that have yet to be heard or distributed in any way, like the songs on Crossroads. The 9 of the 14 had never really been distributed or heard by anybody before. And that would be fun to find that and maybe write some new songs for that project. Those, I think, are my goals. Yeah.
Yeah, those are great goals, and I can't wait to hopefully see both of them come to fruition at some point soon. But
Thank you.
yeah, Gary, thanks so much for coming on. I'll leave your website and stuff down below. Go check out if there is a record store near you. Go to try to see if they have Gary Marks Crossroads or the Record Store Day exclusive vinyl. And yeah, thanks again so much for coming on. I had an amazing time and hope you did as well.
Yes, I did. Thank you. It was a great interview. Thanks so much.
Thank you.